Hey everyone, today we are filling a sketchbook spread with autumnal inspired pieces as it's my favourite season, and I invite you to paint and sketch along with me or just have me on the background whilst you work. Before we get started, I wanted to show you some live painting I did from a holiday I went on where most of the images you'll see in the spread are from. Also because I am just genuinely quite proud of them, and they were so nice to paint as I would sit by the fire or under the veranda whilst there was rain falling and paint, and I just felt so in touch with where I was. And I used to be so scared of live painting, so yeah, I'm genuinely really proud of these. And what you're seeing here is a self-portrait of me sitting on the caravan I was staying in, and it's based off a photo my friend took, and it's one of my favourite photos of me from that holiday. And I did ask him to take it because I knew I looked quite aesthetic on the red caravan in my very autumnal clothes, which I had coordinated for the holiday, and I knew I wanted to put it in my sketchbook, so I did, and let's watch along that, shall we? So here, as you can see, I'm getting out my Viviva watercolour sheets to do the red of the caravan. They are a dye-based watercolour sheet that you can activate. I just really wanted to get the vibrancy of the caravan against the background and kind of against what I was wearing as well. So here I'm getting out my Japanese watercolours to paint some of the Acer trees we saw in this park we went to. And part of the reason why I wanted to get out the Japanese watercolours specifically was, one, because the whole set is designed to imitate the natural colours, and that's how a lot of Japanese watercolours work. But I was with one of my friends who's really into Japan, and who am I kidding, so am I. And they were telling me about the practice of momijigari, which is an ancient Japanese tradition that translates to maple leaf hunting. It's basically when you specifically go out to look for the reds and golds and oranges of the Acer trees, or just trees in general, but in Japan specifically, the Acer trees. So it felt kind of appropriate to use my Japanese watercolours to paint these Acer trees that I just absolutely adored. I loved these trees so much. To the point that I actually have my own Acer tree, which is nowhere near as impressive looking, I have to admit. And something really nice about doing these was me just letting go and letting the colours and the paints do what they want to do, which is something I do struggle with a little bit and something I want to incorporate more into my work. In fact, I think you can see on the left the yellow tree is the one where I try to dictate where the colours go too much, and that ended up working against it, unfortunately. But I do really like these and thinking of maybe turning them into stickers one day, who knows? So this was another favourite bit of the park, which was this house we stumbled across, which was covered in plant life and surrounded by greens and golds. And it just reminded me, weirdly enough, of in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, where you stumble across new locations or a shrine or something, and it really did feel like it just kind of came out of nowhere. And I was telling my housemate to get photos of it for me because my camera battery had died. Well, my phone battery had died. And they were very patient in putting up with me going, okay, get a photo of this, and can you go from this angle now? Okay, thank you. But yeah, I really love this location, and I'm thinking of possibly transferring this piece into a full painting at some point. We'll see. I don't want to put any pressure on myself, and it lives in my sketchbook now as something I've recorded, and I hope you enjoy seeing the process of this. And you'll see me then sticking a bit of information from the park leaflet and the map, which we desperately needed, just so it's a bit more scrapbooky and the page itself is more themed, because most of the images on this sketchbook spread are from the park. And what I'm working on right now is another favourite view from that park, and what's great is this sketchbook spread is just full of favourites, so I'm absolutely delighted. And this was me working very differently to my previous piece where I'd use line work, which is generally how I tend to work. And with this one, I gave myself some brief guidelines, but really wanted to loosen up and kind of capture what I'd done with the Acer trees and just let the paint do what it wanted to do. The main difference being, though, that for this piece, I more or less just worked with the palette I'd brought with me on holiday, which you'd seen from the early images I showed. And that was my M-Gram watercolours. And they had more or less every colour I needed. I think I occasionally cheated and grabbed a green from another paint set because I realised on the holiday, like, this set doesn't have a light green. I have to mix this myself. And sometimes I just want to use a green that I already have. I did use some gouache and Japanese watercolours on it later just to kind of go over some of the bits that I felt weren't vibrant enough. But I really wanted to be quite free and loose with this and just enjoy the painting process without tying myself down in boundaries, which sounds like a life lesson, really. I'm sure there's one in there somewhere. Also, what's interesting is that I ended up changing the way I paint, which, as general kind of art advice, is something that I see a lot of books encourage you to do. And I generally tend to work, I do change the angle of my brush quite a lot, but I tend to work sideways. But because I'd set up my shot so that you could see the paint palette and I'm left-handed, I was like, there's nowhere I can put my arm to rest it. So I had to work more or less straight down, which really changed the brush strokes I was doing. And it ended up, I think, really working in the piece's benefit and really helping that very loose style. So it's just something to think about. And here I am still working on it after I'd done the very satisfying washi tape peel. Basically, I just thought there were still some more colours and textures I could get in, and there does come a point when you're working with water-based mediums that no matter what paint I put down, it just ends up lifting and the colours end up merging. So I just put some pencil crayon over the top to just try and bring back some colours that I wanted. And now we have some images from my local park, which you'll see footage of at the start of the video. I've always loved this place. You'll have seen me paint and reference from it in other videos on my channel, and it felt right to just add some to this autumnal sketchbook page. Since I got my footage and reference photos of the park a little later in the season, you can see that the colours are much more dull and there's a lot less of those reds and golds. It's much more of the oranges and browns, but I still absolutely love that about autumn, and it would feel wrong to not have it as a part of my sketchbook page. I was flagging a little bit at this point, I'll have to admit. By this point I'd sort of done all the exciting images I wanted to do, and at this point it was all about filling up the page with sort of images I had left and what I thought would work. And I wasn't doing any of these seriously bright pieces that I had done on the other one, and as they do in the much duller ones, which I still love, but there are ones I'm more excited to paint, you know? And I thought it was a bright idea to outline these pieces with my very thick fine liner when I hadn't done that on any of my other sketches, so they sort of stood out a little bit awkwardly on the sketchbook page. But you know what, like, the inconsistency is kind of what makes it a sketchbook piece rather than, say, a finished piece or something that I'm intended to be seen, even though I have recorded this entire process. Don't get me wrong, however, I really enjoyed doing these. I found I was able to blend the colours a lot more than I had on my other ones, where I think because it was much earlier in the seasons and the type of place I was in, there was a lot more contrast in the colours, whereas these ones, we were sort of in that hybrid between autumn and winter, and I found I could just really play with watercolour a lot more. And we're back on the holiday now. This is a picture of my friend sitting by a fire. This is actually the friend who told me about Momijigari. And this is the view I had from my cabin, well, my caravan, so to speak. And what if I was painting live, I would have been painting from that first picture I was doing on the sketchbook, if that makes sense. But it was usually quite late when we had the fire going, and usually we started cooking and chatting and making s'mores. So I wanted to be a part of that rather than sort of sitting out to one side. Also, it was like way warmer by the fire, so it would have been foolish for me not to sit there. And that to me is what's important about painting in a sketchbook rather than painting live. Both have their merits and their benefits, but I would have missed out if I'd been trying to get this image live, and I'd have been frustrated if at any point it wasn't working. So, I took a picture and I was like, I'll work from this later, that's fine. And I got what I wanted live, from the place we were staying when I wanted to, when I had that time, and I gave that time to myself, but I knew I wasn't going to be missing out on too much, or it was going to be part of my enjoyment of the place, as they were usually quite mindful and restful moments, even though, like I say, I was painting. Whereas being able to look back at this and paint it later and take a bit more time with the colours I choose, both from memory, from photos, and from the previous stuff I've done, helps inform the piece much better, in my opinion anyway. And here's the sketchbook page done. I hope you folks enjoyed watching the process of each of these pieces and seeing it all come together. Do let me know if you have a favourite and if there's any you'd like to see taken into a bigger piece. If you would like to keep up with me, I have various social medias which you'll see in the description, and I do also have a shop on Etsy, so if you would like to possibly purchase some prints for yourself or for someone in the holiday season, then follow that link and see what you like. I will let you go now, and stay creative and stay wonderful, and I hope you'll have a fantastic autumn, what's left of it anyway, and I hope you have a warm and cosy winter. Thank you all. Bye.